But first, it's often said people are better the second time round. Certainly Bob Menzies was a better PM the second time. The same's often said of John Howard too when he returned to the Liberal leadership. Will that be the case for Barnaby Joyce, elected a second time today as National Party leader, and from tomorrow when he's sworn in again as Australia's Deputy Prime Minister? Well, time will tell, but he is hoping. At his best, Barnaby Joyce is a great retail politician. He's gregarious. He actually likes people. Many MPs I've found don't. He's a lot smarter than his detractors give him credit for, and he works hard. He's also very alive to the fact that too many in Canberra let the job go to their head. That's the upside. But as we know, it's never all been upside with Barnaby. For all his strengths, at his worst, he can be ill-disciplined. And he's prone to shooting his mouth off before he thinks, or worse, he doesn't do his homework to actually get the detail right. Look at his remarks last week about the Billa family that ignored the fact that children born here to non-citizens take the nationality of their parents. Still, he's managed to keep his authenticity and the common touch, despite being in Parliament in Canberra for over 15 years. That's no mean feat. That in itself is rare. Don't underestimate his ability to attract voters who might normally, in a regional community, vote with Labor. Those in opposition who think his personal life will impact him this time around need to think again. After all, Labor's Tony Burke, they got divorced and later married his former Chief of Staff. Voters want leaders. They don't expect saints. Barnaby Joyce, at least, has always been a distinctive politician with a strong set of convictions and few qualms about expressing them inside the machine or outside in the public. That in itself is refreshing at a time when politicians seem to have given up speaking to us like we're adults. Will voters think that today's leadership spill is indulgent, though? Probably they will. But by the end of the week, if it produces a better and stronger government more focused on them, with the issues inside the coalition getting a bit of contestability, I reckon they'll move on. And today's bloodletting will be forgotten. Michael McCormack, a decent man who conceded with grace and good humour today, seems to have lost the numbers because he hadn't given the Nationals enough of a distinctive identity. It's a fair criticism, particularly if you look at New South Wales, where some of the state Nats resemble more like inner city Greens than they do country Conservatives. Barnaby's challenge will be to re-establish the Nats as a strong voice for regional Australia without too obviously rocking the boat inside the Morrison government. It won't be easy. He'll have to bruise a few left-leaning Liberals, that's for sure, but I reckon that's a good thing. Something the coalition could do with a timely reminder of what Liberals actually stand for and what the base wants to see from their elected MPs. In a handful of months' time, the government will start its campaign for an historic fourth term. It rightly will get credit for largely keeping COVID out of Australia and for keeping the economy strong despite all the disruption. But given the polls and the recent electorate boundary changes and the risk of an its time factor, it's got a fight on its hands to stay in power. If it's not careful, this is a government that will get framed as old and tired. Indeed, some today were already trying this on.
I think we began with Abbott and Truss, and then we had Turnbull and Truss, and then we had Turnbull and Joyce, and then we had Turnbull and McCormack, and then we had Morrison and McCormack, and now we have Morrison and Joyce. Seriously, all of that in 3 terms, and from a government that does not have an agenda, even prior to the pandemic.
This is where, on balance, Barnaby should be an asset rather than a liability. He knows what the centre-right stands for. He believes in it, he'll fight for it, and he can sell it. Some of his colleagues can't even get one of those right. But to serve well second time round, he has to be the best version of himself. So too the Prime Minister, who won't be able to take Joyce for granted like perhaps he might have his predecessor. To make this Morrison-Joyce partnership work, there'll have to be some wins For the National Party, real wins too, not spin. There will have to be more baseload power into the electricity system, not just billions on subsidies for renewables. And the feds will have to do more than just talk about dams and water storages. I can't see Barnaby Joyce tamely acquiescing to the new draft national school curriculum either, or just nodding through more and more spending. With Joyce back, the federal government commitment to net zero emissions by 2050 will face much tougher internal scrutiny. At the last election, Scott Morrison was right to pillory Labor for signing up to emissions reduction targets with no specific plan to achieve them and no credible costings. And it'd be the height of folly then for this same man, Scott Morrison, one election later, to do exactly the same thing. For an ambitious and capable politician, it's absolute purgatory to be out of things and on the backbench, as Barnaby has been for the past 3 years. Hopefully, he's a much steadier, deeper person for that adversary he says he is.
I acknowledge my faults, and I resigned as I should, and I did. I've spent 3 years on the backbench, and you know, I hope I come back a better person. I don't walk away from the fact that you have to have time to consider not only the effect on yourself, but more importantly, the effect on others. I've done that. I don't want to dwell on the personal, except to say, hopefully, one learns from their mistakes and makes a better person of themselves.
Now, if that's right, it'll make him a stronger leader in a better government and a tougher opponent for Labor. Barnaby back and at his best should at least help stop the leakage of Conservative votes by giving the government a bit of backbone it needs, not just on practical issues like dams, energy and more, but the culture war against the woke agenda of the hard left that far too many Liberals want to shy away from. If nothing else, it feels tonight that there's more than just a little fight now in the centre-right, and that in itself is a good thing.